Welcome to Alien Theorists Theorizing Case File 222, the mystery of the Yuba County Five. I'm Braden.
I'm Sil.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Andrew.
Oh,
Woo! Special Sunday edition of the podcast tonight. This case, you know, a lot of people say it's the American Dyatlov Pass. I heard that. You know, there is some connections. It definitely gives you some of the mystery revolves it, like that revolves around it. Kind of give you some of those vibes.
yeah, a little bit.
So, like right away, I was enthralled with this one. Like I was watching documentaries, reading articles. It basically the first when someone, I think it was Zella, pitched it, and I read like the intro of the Wikipedia page. I was like, "Yep,
Sold."
sold."
Well, I was looking through episodes for like suggestions on the list on Discord. I was just scrolling all like so far back, and someone said you should do the Yuba County Five, but I was like, we missed it way back in the day somewhere. I think Dan even responded and said like, yeah, we got that one. That's a good one, but we just never did it. And then I was scrolling back.
No, I remember reading up about it. Like I remember reading a bunch of things about it, so I was already familiar with the case. So I kind of knew it. I couldn't remember why I had read up about it. Like, I don't know why, but I don't know if we were going to do it I don't think we were going to do it for a confidential. It might've been something else. I'm not sure.
No, this is like,
there's no way.
no, I mean, the minute Braden sent me that article, I've been knee deep in this. I haven't been able to put it down.
This one's got
Like,
mongoose
got everything.
written all over this one.
Dude, I was addicted to it. Contrary to contrary belief, I fucking read a book, the whole thing. And there was only like 3 pictures in it.
What book was that?
Out of Bounds, the story of the Yuba County Five by Drew Beeson. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's a cool case. So hopefully we can cram it into one episode because it's one of those ones that you could almost do a 2 or 3 if you really got into depth. But
You know us.
you know what?
Just skim the surface.
No, it's gonna be fun. And it starts something like this. On the night of February 24th, Joseph Shones, age 55, went to check the weather conditions up at his lodge in the Plumas National Forest. On the way up the winding, bumpy road, snow conditions were fierce, drifts forming. His car got stuck on the shoulder. So he does what any single man would do, try and get out and push it yourself. The exertion, though, was too much. He started suffering pains, sharp shooting pains, his left arm. He was having a heart attack.
You should have said, you said sharp shooting pains and you didn't say a Bret heart attack.
He was having a Bret heart attack.
Yeah.
So he decided, I mean, it wasn't a highly used road, but people do go up and down. It is a national park. There's skiing and outdoor activities. So he sat in his car, started the heater. It was a cold winter night. He sat there for 6 hours. When he
Now, just with a heart attack, like when you're sitting there, like, is that, as someone who's, you know, never had one.
Surprising.
Yet.
Not yet.
Is that, Andrew, is that something where it's like, it's almost debilitating, like while it's happening, like, and you would just hunker down, like you can't do anything, like it's too painful?
Absolutely. Well, definitely there's varying degrees to heart attacks, right?
Yeah. Well, he's not dead, so we know it's not that severe.
Right? So a mild, like people can have mild heart attacks and not even know it, right? That being said, this guy, he seems like he's suffering from a typical heart attack, exertion based, right? Like it also, like we don't really know for sure, but they also could have just been like a stable angina too. Like he's exerting himself, the chest pain came on. When he stopped exerting himself, the pain eased. But it sounds like, you know, like if you're having a heart attack and he's literally having the pain down his left arm, he's clutching his chest, like he's having a significant cardiac event.
He's having an episode here.
He's having a jammer. He's having
he's having a jammer.
Cold. He climbs back in the car, he turns it on, cranks the heat, and he's just chilling in his car because that's basically all he can do.
He's waiting.
It's the 78. There's no cell phones.
No,
also something I will point out that we'll give a little throwback later. He's driving a Volkswagen Bug.
A nice Beetle.
Yeah.
Probably rear wheel drive. Not ideal for snowy conditions. But you know what? You got to go with what you have. So he's waiting in the car. It's like 6 hours go by. He's starting to run out of gas. When he sees what seems like truck headlights pull up behind him. And what he says, he spots like 6 people, possibly one holding a baby. When he cries out for help, I mean, he's hoping someone comes. When he cries out for help, the headlights turn off, the voices stop, and they seemingly disappear. Time goes by. He feels like...
I will interject, though. I think those people that he called out for help that ducked him, it's probably smart. They've probably seen that meme with that old guy being like, call an ambulance, but not for me, right? Like, they're probably just making sure it's... Like,
this is the oldest trick in the book.
Yeah, they'll make sure.
Yeah.
After the headlights go out, he's baffled as to why these people won't help him. But after a while, his car's out of gas. There's nothing he can do. He feels okay. He bundles up, and he makes out on foot for the next closest point. And on his way walking, though, he notices a 68 Montego just seemingly parked on the shoulder. And little did he know, he may have been the last person to see the Yuba County 5. Dun, dun, dun.
Fuck, got chills already, boys. Like, I know what happens, and I got chills.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
All right, let's take it to the start. Who are the Yuba County 5, and why is the internet and every true crime show, including us, obsessed with this case? No one is.
Baster, you're not jumping in here?
Are you asking me? I don't know if you're asking me here.
I opened it up to the floor.
I can introduce you guys quickly to the Yuba County 5, right? As individuals, we've got Ted Ware, age 32. One comment, let's just touch this right off the bat here. So we're going to be talking about these 5 individuals, and a factor in this case is the fact that they all are suffering from a level of cognitive impairment, right? And the levels of cognitive impairment vary between these guys, right? But one of the things that we want to talk about like right away is like that might have been a variable in what happened, but it isn't the reason why these things happen to these individuals.
No. And if you look up the true headline of the articles, you will see it printed in a different way. And that's
2005. Braden would have found it hilarious.
Luckily, this is 2022, Braden. All right, but so like let's touch that right off the bat. And like at the time, this is what 1978. They didn't really have like, the mental health
care we do
it was somewhat limited. We didn't really have the best diagnostic tools and stuff like that back then. So a number of these gentlemen were most likely on the autism spectrum, right? Or it's kind of tough to say because they didn't have
I would say most would be considered high functioning.
Absolutely. Right. So right away, we've got Ted Ware, age 32 at the time. His parents kind of described him as a boy trapped in a man's body. And when they said like he was a big dude, he was 6 foot, 200 pounds. We got Bill Sterling, age 29, kind of the same situation, a mind like a child, was super spiritual. He would go to the psychiatric hospitals and read scripture to them, that type of stuff. We've got Jack Doc Madruga, age 30, never officially had a diagnosis, right? But his family kind of described him as being known for being slow, and he was an Army veteran. We've got Jackie Hewitt, 24, kind of known as probably the slowest of the group, suffered probably the largest cognitive impairment out of everybody. They say he kind of had issues with dysphagia. He couldn't properly pronounce words.
Couldn't dial a phone.
Couldn't dial a phone. He had a debilitating speech impediment as well. And then we had Gary Mathias, who was age 25 at the time, newest member of the group. Now, Gary didn't necessarily have a cognitive impairment, but he did have a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, which they kind of, it's not for sure, but when he was a child, he was involved in a motor vehicle incident where he fell out of a moving car, hit his head, lost his vision for 6 days. Yeah, some damage to his occipital lobe. And they think that maybe that kind of stems from where these issues came from. But yeah, so he suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. So nothing really on the cognitive spectrum, but like everybody knows, paranoid schizophrenia, delusions, hallucinations.
He seemed
like,
off.
And he had got it, like they had got it under control. Like from all accounts, between his parents and the doctors, he was like the poster child for like their treatment, because he had been doing so well
for the last 2 years. He had been on a really good regimen of he was on proloxanine and Cognitin and something else, another one I can't remember, but most of these drugs are now discontinued. But
he was leveled out from his schizophrenic nature, more or less.
Supposedly, yeah.
Okay. So that's them. Now, the end of the story is they go missing, obviously. This is a true crime case. But what happened leading up to the events of that night?
Yeah, so they were all members of a basketball team called the Gateway Gators.
Great name.
So, yeah, unreal name, right? So they were all kind of grouped together. I think Gary was the last person to join the group. One of his substance abuse counselors was kind of pushed him in the general vicinity of the team, being like, hey, I know this great group of guys play on a basketball team. They could use another member. It would be good for you because you used to be an athlete. I know Gary used to play football and basketball and stuff like that too, and he's kind of looking for something to do. So this counselor matched them up together, and they got along swimmingly. And, we're playing on this basketball team together. And the night before their big game where they're playing in it was a kind of like a Special Olympics tournament that they were playing in, they all decided to go watch their favorite basketball team playing in Chico.
Like a college team?
Yeah, Chico. I think I might be wrong. Is it a junior college, Chico? Or maybe it's just...
I from like all accounts, college basketball. Like that's...
Yeah, California State University.
Oh, so not junior college.
Yuba to... Yeah, they drove from Yuba to Chico. Yeah, California State. So they're attending a college game. They all love basketball, so they go and attend. This college ball is almost pro, so they're watching a good ball game, getting them psyched for their game the next day.
Well, ball is life.
And some of them had told their parents like, "Hey, don't let me sleep in." They laid out all their basketball stuff. Like, hey, make sure to wake me up in the morning. I want to, get up for this game, and that I'm excited for. When they were leaving the house, some of their parents had mentioned of like, hey, bring a jacket. They're like, I won't need one. It's all good. Like, don't worry about me. It's all good. Like, so they head to Yuba, which is 50 miles away from Chico, or head to Chico.
Other way around.
Yeah, head to Chico from Yuba. So they watch the game. The game ends. They stop. Pretty much they're stopped at a place called Bears Market. They're stopping for snacks, refreshments. And yeah, the accounts differ from what candy they get, but pretty much are like cherry pies, lemon pies, Snickers, marathons, Pepsis.
It sounds
all the
like
good
shit
stuff
you grab for a road trip, man.
Yeah,
like stuff you would grab, like any of us would grab.
It's a 1 hour.
We were driving 50 miles.
It's a 1 hour drive back home. You get your snacks. You roll with the boys. Off you go.
Boys are fired up, man. Their team won. They're having a good time.
Yeah.
Went on a roadie, right?
So they're on their way home. What happened? Like they obviously.
That's the last time anyone ever sees them. Is what happened.
They grabbed
other than Mr. Shones, apparently.
Mr. Shones, but through the investigation, the police do go back to this market, and the lady who's running it, it's like closing time, and she remembers this group of five specifically because, they pulled a classic. Oh, they're still open. It's 9:59. You go in. You go in. You cause a ruckus. You buy a bunch of stuff. It's a mild.
I always feel like an asshole when I do that.
It's a mild inconvenience to the store clerk, but yeah, they're still open technically. So, but through the investigation, she does say she remembers this five, and she's the last confirmed member until he comes forward later. Until Mr. Shones comes forward during the investigation and says he's seen the car.
Yeah, but so they obviously none of them show up. None of them make it home,
which is absolutely out of character for them.
Completely,
right?
Very out. Yeah, never happens.
Right. So all these their parents have basically stayed up throughout the night. because they're so worried about these kids, because, you know, even though they're adults, right? We go back to the fact that they, you know, they're all suffering from various levels of cognitive impairment, and, you know, their parents play a pretty big role in their life still, right? Looking after them. You know, they all still live with their parents, even though they're, you know, in their mid to late 20s. So, you know, the stress level's high at this point in time, because all 5 have not been heard of, right? And all these parents know each other. Most of these kids have known each other since, you know, they were little kids growing up. Mm-hmm. So all the parents have kind of called each other being like, hey, you know, have you seen Jack?
Yeah, you heard from him.
Yeah. And they've all kind of been like, no, we're waiting up. We're a little bit stressed out.
So they go to the police, and they want to file a missing persons report. The police almost seem hesitant at the start because there's 5 guys. And they would like not normally do it for a group of 5.
Well, absolutely. Like, think about that. When have you seen when have you heard of a circumstance like this with that large of a group of people just going missing?
Just gone. Yeah. No one knows where they went or why they went. So initially they were hesitant, but obviously eventually on the 28th they were missing for 3 days. So they sent out a search party, and that's when a ranger finds. So
yeah, they're alerting other law enforcement agencies in the area of like, hey, be on the lookout for, you know, this car of these men, yada yada. They're missing any information, and a forest ranger goes, I've seen that car.
Yeah, I saw it a few days ago, for fuck's sakes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which is, see, that's the worst part though, too, because the car is parked pristinely, which is, you know, it's got some snow covering it. And it, you know, it didn't draw any concerns because it's parked in an area where you would see cars parked randomly, right?
Yeah, it's like a national park. There's like a camp. They call it Rogers Cow Camp, pretty much. And there's what they call it, elk retreat, or?
Yes, elk retreat.
So yeah, it's a national park. There's a bunch of like, there's camping and hiking and winter activities up there. And that's where Mr. Shones got stuck and had the jammer, and he walked himself out, and eventually he's okay. So the ranger notifies the police that, yeah, I seen this car, and that's when the mystery starts to really take shape.
Yeah, because police go to this car, and one of the first things they look at is they notice that it's not that stuck. Like, they look and they're like, well, the snow drifted in, you know, like, it's not that stuck. They open the car, you know, all the snacks are eaten and, you know, are littered around. There's no keys in it. I think a window was down. The front window was down.
Yeah, the driver's side window.
And so they're like, okay, well, you know, maybe the car died and they couldn't get it started again. So they hotwire the car. Car fires right up. They had a quarter tank of gas. So they're like, well, that's weird. They noticed that the car had spun out a little bit, but they're like, hey, like, one guy go out front and just push us out. One guy just pushes them out easily.
And one guy, let alone 5.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You've got 4 capable dudes, and one of them, you know, able to drive. Like, that's.
Yeah, it seems weird. And through the investigation, they inspected. I mean, I guess this is a dirt gravel road, potholes, rocks.
It's a Forest Service road.
Forest Service road. So you're driving a already low riding car, fully loaded with 5 adult men. Let's say, so, you know, they're probably not all 200 pounds. Let's say 800 pounds of weight. So, you know, your car's weighed down. Any bump is going to send the shocks, you know. So you would think there'd be maybe a little more damage to the undercarriage. Through the investigation, they say, I mean, it looks fine. It doesn't look like it was banged up this FSR and then got stuck in the ditch.
One of the things that I read is they're like, it looks like someone either drove that road very carefully, because like they weren't even throwing like slush and shit back up under the undercarriage, or someone who knew the road. Because if they were just driving to drive, they'd be smacking potholes and you know, hitting bumps. And you know, if anyone's driven a Forest Service road, you hit one of those like where a grader's kind of like graded up, and it's like you feel like you're gonna bounce right off the fucking road if you're going too fast.
Absolutely.
Like, none of that, right? Like, this thing looks like it was babied to where it lay.
Well,
which is interesting because only 2 of the boys had their driver's license, Jack Madruga and Gary Mathias. And now this was Jack Madruga's vehicle. And by all accounts, from his parents, family, everybody, this car was his life.
He fucking loved it.
He was meticulous about taking care of it. And just so much to the point where Jack and Jackie Hewitt were best friends. And I guess, Jack would go pick up Jackie all the time. They'd do things together. And a lot of the times Jack would pick up Jackie, they'd hang out at his house, and then it would be time to drive him home. And the weather got bad, and Jack refused to drive him home because he didn't want to fucking damage his car. Said, yeah, no, it's bad. You got to, mom and dad, you got to drive him home, or his parents got to come get him. I can't risk it. It's not safe.
Obsessed with his vehicle. Loved it. So, yeah, you're driving up at FSR. It's snowing. Like that night it was snowing. So if there was potholes or anything, now they're also covered in snow. So it makes it even harder to judge. So, yeah, it makes sense. Like, you either have to know that road or you babied it up. So, yeah, it's a weird one. Just to get loosely stuck, and then it seems it's abandoned.
Well, and this is like, it's so far in the wrong direction too. Let alone like
Not
this
only,
thing is.
It's at an elevation of what, like 5,000 feet?
Yeah, like not only would they have had to make a wrong turn on a road they knew where to drive because they've driven it before because that's where their favorite team plays, they would have had to make a wrong turn, then head up a fucking mountain, and then make another turn onto a Forest Service road and continue babying down that road to the point where it was like, what was it? They're 2 hours in the wrong direction?
At least, I think. It was like 2 hours, 2 or 3. But like that, before we even get into like that, to me seems like absolutely deliberate. Like that's not a mistake you would make, especially if you end up going to an elevation like that. You would,
well, yeah.
Like I said, 2 of these men had their driver's license. 2 of them were in the Army. 3 of them had actual jobs. Like,
they get painted with, the brush of like, these people had intellectual disabilities. But even if that's the case, I work with a lot of Special Olympians, and the one thing I can tell you about them is like routine, right? Like they have a routine and they stick to it and they know it. So if Madriga was driving home, people are like, well, maybe he made a wrong turn. I'm like, no, he wouldn't have. If he is this creature of habit, he's not making that wrong turn. He would know it because he's probably been driven it with his parents before, and now this is ingrained in him. I take this route home.
Well, and also, sorry, I was just going to say that also, like, so say it was snowy, it was foggy or whatever, you took the wrong turn. It was a paved road, and there's a time when it turns to a gravel Forest Service road, and you think once you hit that, and you go up a little bit, and you're like, this is definitely the wrong road. Why not turn around?
Just to touch on Braden's point about the creatures of habit, Tim Ware is such a creature of habit that there was a house fire in his home, and his parents were trying to drag him out of his bed to get out of the house, and he was refusing to leave his bed because he had to get some sleep before work tomorrow. He's like, I can't leave. I have to get sleep for my job tomorrow. I don't want to be late. And they're like, listen, man, your fucking house is on fire.
Burning down.
That, right? Like that just speaks to the fact, like these guys, like this is their favorite team, right? This is what these boys do. There's not a hell of a lot to do in 1978 on the weekend for these guys. They follow their favorite basketball team around. This is not the first time they went and watched them play in Chico. They know those roads.
Right. So yeah, they drive to Chico. They're supposed to turn around, drive home. They got their snacks. They seem to drive the wrong way. Now the car is found 2.5 hours away from their house up a forest road in a national park at elevation. Snow.
Full of gas, not stuck in the snow.
Well, not full of gas, but it wasn't empty. It didn't run out of gas, right?
Enough gas to get home.
Exactly. They could have easily at least they had to have been able to turn around and get back. And if they did get stuck that bad, which they didn't, what happened to them? That's the next mystery. Like they got stuck. The ranger finds the car. He calls it in. Like this is super strange. They're 2.5 hours away, not even remotely close to where they're supposed to go. So
search and rescue did their best efforts for a couple days, but their search was impeded because there was a whole bunch of snowstorms that kind of impacted the area. So it was blowing new snow drifts in. It was just too dangerous for them to continue the search. But all in all, search and rescue, police, and volunteers, I think it was 6,000 hours were logged searching for these men. And that turned up nothing.
Yeah, that a lot of manpower over those 5 days. But yeah, compounding snow, like snow blizzards, like day after day. So you get 4 or 5 inches, it adds up real quick. Like you lose, if there was a trail, say it's gone. Like it's completely gone. So yeah, they give up. Unfortunately, there's nothing really more they can do. And they pretty much have to pick it back up when the snow melts. And that, like, it's wild. Like 5 guys go missing, seemingly on a routine trip for them. 5 days of searching, nothing can be found. They have to give up.
It makes you wonder, like, why get out of the car? Like, you have John down the road who's sitting in a warm car. If you thought you were stuck, just turn on the heater and chill. Like, what would get them out of the car and then to wherever they went?
Yeah, for whatever reason, they got kind of stuck, or they thought they were stuck, and they must have exited the vehicle, or some theories say maybe forced from the vehicle in some fashion. But before we continue with the case, we're going to grab a quick beer. We'll be right back.
Oh, wow, that went fast.
We're back.
So the most of the trails and stuff are all inaccessible for months after the initial blizzard that they have. They're unable to find any of the bodies of the what have been labeled the Yuba County 5 at this point. So June 1978 rolls around, and you have a man riding his motorcycle near an area where he noticed a broken window on a Forest Service trailer, like kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So kind of a trailer that was used by like Forest Service agents to kind of hole up when they had to, things like this, kind of stocked during the year and stuff like this.
Probably like watching for wildfires or
right,
whatever, whatever conservation or forest duties, that would be their home base.
Yeah.
So from the place where they had discovered the car, this trailer was about 19 miles up the mountain. Now, possibly there is this idea that the Forest Service snowcat had ran up the road to that trailer on February 23rd, prior to the Yuba County 5 going missing, and had left a actually packed path of snow that perhaps had contributed to something along later. So inside the trailer is where they find the body of Ted Wire.
Yeah, they open this door and they're like, there's someone dead in here.
The stench is real.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's especially because how long ago was this? Like how long have they been missing now?
It's like 4 months.
It's February to June.
We're talking like end stages of decomp, and unfortunately, being someone who's had the unfortunate privilege of walking in and seeing people in similar situations, it is a smell that goes right up into your nostrils and right into the base of your gut, and instantly induces a nausea and a smell that you cannot get out of you. Like it's in your nose for days after. Like it is the most instant rancid smell on the fucking planet.
Just latches to your smell receptors and doesn't go away.
And you just can't describe it. Like it just goes right into the pit of your stomach and turns you fucking green.
So the day after they find Ware's body, the searchers managed to find the remains of Madruga and Sterling about 11.4 miles from the car on opposite sides of the road approaching to the trailer. And then 2 days later, just off the same road, but much closer to the trailer, they found Jackie Hewitt's remains. All that was identified later to be all that remained of him was his backbone and a pair of Levi's and ripple-soled Get There shoes were used to identify him.
The police asked that the dad not attend because they were now finding bodies, and it's actually Jackie's dad who sees the jacket, goes and grabs the jacket, and as he lifts the jacket, the spine comes out of the jacket.
It's fucking horrifying.
And later his skull is found, near that same area.
So we have one body found in the trailer, which is about 19 miles from the car, the abandoned car. Two bodies that are 11.4 miles from the car, so like almost right in the middle between the car and the trailer. And then not far off from that, the other body. So we have 4 found bodies.
We should probably touch on Ted Weir's body a little bit more. The one that they'd found in the lodge.
Yeah, so let's go back to Ted.
Well,
Weir.
let's get into it. It's like this is why it's so mysterious.
Yep, 100%. So they find his body in the trailer. What's so weird about it, Andrew?
Well, first of all, his body's wrapped up in these heavy blankets, right? And right away they notice like he's got a large beard and he's incredibly emaciated, which I find that super interesting because we've already talked about he's in advanced stages of decomposition. So it'd be really hard, like any body would be emaciated in that stage of decomposition. But anyway, so they surmise that there must have been some type of starvation going on. They pulled off the blankets. They realized that he had these just awfully gangrenous toes that were missing.
Like frostbite.
Potentially, yeah, that's what would make sense. And then it seemed very confusing though, because we've talked about like this was a lodge that was utilized by the forestry services, right? People, the workers.
Yep.
This lodge was stocked to the nines with military ration food.
Canned food.
Canned food all over the place. Not only did it have canned food, but it had propane heaters. Right?
That were there. They just needed to be turned on. It had a fireplace that was untouched.
And the only evidence that they could find that there was a few rations that were broken into, and there were a few candles that had evidence of being used. And then other than that, they found some personal belongings. But one really weird thing that kind of stood out is the fact that there was a gold watch there that none of the parents knew where it came from.
It was definitely not one of the kids' watches.
They said that if all 5 men had made it to that cabin and had utilized the supplies in the cabin, there was enough supplies to keep those men alive for an entire year. 31 cans of food were eaten, and like Andrew said, some candles. And that's the weird thing, is that because of the beard growth and how skinny that Ted had gotten, they actually believe that he may have been alive for up to 13 weeks before he died of starvation.
Between 8 and 13 weeks, they think, just judging by the growth and how much weight he had lost, because he was about 200 pounds, they said, when that's a standard walking around weight. And when they picked him up, they estimated him at it would have been 120 pounds when he died. And there's one more thing about the trailer too, is there was one broken window, which they think maybe they had broken the window to get into the trailer initially, but no attempt was made to board up that window or, stack stuff against it to keep the cold out. It's like they broke in, and they never try to keep themselves warm, really. Besides the blankets on the bed, that's the only thing that was in there to keep them warm.
And one interesting thing too is it kind of proves now that the one thing that a lot of people kind of speculate is that there's no way Ted was in this cottage alone, because with the state of his gangrenous feet and his injuries, there's no way he would have tolerated heavy blankets being put over top of his feet. It would have been the most incredibly painful thing in the world. So they think that possibly one of the other people, and obviously we only have one body that's not accounted for it right now, and Gary Mathias made it to that cabin with him and potentially took care of him while they're in the cabin together.
Well,
yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Either or he died, or someone found him when he was dead and then wrapped him in blankets, possibly.
Yeah, and they also found a pair of Gary's shoes. His running shoes.
Yeah, Gary's shoes were there, and Ted's were missing. And Ted, by all accounts, when he left that night, would have been wearing some heavier duty leather shoes.
Probably would have held up a little bit better in the snow.
So now you start to think okay, well, right away in my head, I'm like, okay, well, this is getting weird. But the first part I can't get over is I'm like, 19 miles, that's 32 kilometers away.
So
in winter,
the author that I was reading, this Drew Beeson guy, he said he went over all the evidence again, and he actually went to the site and measured the distance himself, walked the distance supposedly, and apparently, according to him, it's 11 miles, not 19 miles.
Well, it's 11 miles to where is that to the cabin or where the remains were found? Because the remains were found at 11 miles
to the cabin. It says right here, I can send it in the group if you want. It says 11 miles from the car to the cabin and 5.6 miles as the crow flies, which basically means in a straight line.
Okay.
So so if you followed that path,
that's still a long
in the middle of winter with no winter gear on and runners, fucking right.
Well, then what does he say the other 2 bodies were found? Because it says 11.4 for those bodies in the everything I read, and then the cabin 19. So did they convert to kilometers and then someone just did not convert it back to miles maybe?
He attributes it to the police making a mistake.
It's still 18 kilometers to the cabin.
It's a hell of a walk.
Freezing temperatures, snowing. That's so if your car gets stuck.
Definitely enough to give you some frostbite on your toes, I would imagine.
Oh, for sure. But then if they say they got stuck for whatever reason, theory 1, they got stuck, they got lost, they got stuck for whatever reason, they left the car. Why did only 2 make it? Did 2 freeze to death and they just left them and just kept walking?
If they got stuck Why the fuck would they walk uphill? Why would they keep going up a mountain?
Well, with nothing weird
doesn't make
happen,
sense to me.
let's play it out like nothing weird happens. They crash their car. Okay, they crash their car into the ditch. They get out. They're eating their snacks. They roll down the window. Ted's looking. He spins the tires. They all get out and they go, well, we're stuck. Let's walk into the woods, because none of them have any history. One of them had been up in that area once fishing years ago and had never gone back.
Hated it.
He hated it. Jack Madruga.
So Jack goes, hey, you know what? Like I came fishing up here 10 years ago. Let's just walk in this direction in the middle of a snowstorm. They proceed to then walk 18 kilometers, which would take, probably 3.5 hours if you're in good conditions. So you're,
add longer than that. Yeah.
There's like 4-foot snow drifts in some sections, right? So you're adding a lot of time to this. They walk up. They are now completely lost. 2 guys have gotten tired and probably laid down because of hypothermia.
They're not dressed. We go back to that. They didn't take jackets. They didn't have snow boots. They didn't have gloves.
Nothing for the elements. They then make it to it. They're like, oh, thank God we found a random cabin. All right, there it is. Perfect. They smack a window open. They open the doors. The one guy that had the best shoes has the worst frostbite. Because they say he lost 5, by his body. Ted lost 5 toes to frostbite. They lay down. They're like, forget we don't want to eat too many rations. They pop it open. Everyone else seemingly leaves the cabin and dies or never sees from again. And Ted lays there to die a slow death without
utilizing any of the heat or
anything.
Which is interesting to me because it's almost like they don't want to be found, right? It's almost like they're hiding from something.
Right. That's one of the things that I thought. I was like, why? They're lighting candles. There's matches in this trailer and they're lighting candles, right? They're looking at these things. They're lighting them to keep light and whatever. But I'm like, everyone says like, hey, these guys are special needs and they had learning disabilities and they wouldn't have known to light a fire. I'm like, 2 of them had military training and one of them we know made it to that trailer because he left his shoes. They would have seen if they were using matches to light the candles, they would have seen the fireplace and gone,
listen,
hey.
We don't know for sure. Like maybe Jack fucking grabbed his shoes because he's like, these shoes suck. I got frostbite. Maybe these shoes will be better. We don't know if he was there for sure, but we can assume that he was there. Like it's a guess.
But they're not lighting the fireplace, right? They're looking at it and they're going, nah.
Not even boarding up the window.
Yeah, there's wood.
The weirder thing for me is the blankets. The blankets is what tell me somebody else was in that fucking that cabin with him.
Like bundled up, because if his feet were in that bad a condition,
you wouldn't let anything touch your feet. You'd be the most agony you've ever been in your life.
Yeah, dude, it's so strange. So that all strangeness aside, they just randomly do this. They walk all the way. One guy, but he's now one of them is surviving in the cabin. Like he's grown a beard. He's starved to death. He's starved. He's lost 80 pounds of body mass.
That's weird. I just don't like. It's interesting to be able to how they can come to that in his level of fucking decomposition. It's interesting to me. I'd love to know how we can come to that conclusion.
There's 31 rations, so he would eat a single ration every 2.9 days until his demise.
Judging by the growth of his beard.
And the 31 cans of Eaton.
Yeah, it's super strange. Yeah,
maybe that's where the toes went.
Cooked them up?
Yeah, some nugs.
Toe nugs.
Yeah, buddy.
Okay, so it's a fucking strangest mystery. So let's go back to the car. Something must have happened at the car to drive these guys up the hill. Dan says some reports do say maybe a snowcat worked, because I'm pretty sure it's like cross country ski trails and stuff. So they would have a snowcat. So if they did plow, I guess if it wouldn't have been the road, if it was like a cat path, they just decided that they're just going to follow it uphill for some reason. for that.
Why wouldn't
far.
you walk back down the path, the road you came down? Like none of them know this area. So it's like you're like, hey, there looks like a path. Let's walk it in the dark.
Yeah. So what happened around the car? Like, one window's rolled down. They had gas. They had eaten their snacks, more or less. It seems like something.
It's interesting.
It's the strangest thing, man.
I mean, what would you? Okay, it's cold out. It's freezing out. What would you roll your window down a bit to do? Probably to talk to somebody.
Yep. I would say.
That's what my brain goes to.
See, my brain went to someone was looking out the window while in reverse, looking at the tires spinning.
Yeah, that maybe.
Right? That's kind of what I thought, looking back, like leaning way out while you have it in reverse to see your tires spinning. You go, we're stuck, bud. Like,
yeah, that's good, actually. I never thought of that, too. I don't think it was all the way down, though. It was just like, from what I read, it was like down like a crack, basically.
yeah.
Yeah, and it seemed weird too because he was so particular about his car. His parents thought it would weird that he would just leave his window down. Like he was so particular about his vehicle. It just seems like it's weird that for whatever reason he rolled the window down, and they got out of the car and forgot about the window. Something got them out. For whatever reason, they had to get out, and they all left the car. 4 bodies were found. 1 remains were never found.
Yeah, and it was weird too, because like as we talked about, they said that it looked like Ted Ware had somewhat like starved himself, basically, but I guess the coroner came to the conclusion that he died from pulmonary congestion.
What's that? Like
pneumonia,
fluid in your lungs?
Yeah, it can very well lead to a pneumonia, but it basically it could have been it could lead to a few different things, but most likely would have led to heart failure, and that could have been due to the extreme conditions, but. That's what led to his death. And then we know, like when you're on your deathbed and you're slowly dying, you're not eating. There's no will to live. There's people that go fucking a week without eating or drinking.
Yeah.
Right.
Eat the wood off the wall.
Huh?
Right? People eat whatever they can. Like they won't starve. They'll eat whatever.
No. I mean, you will. Like if you're slowly dying, you won't eat anything.
Yeah, but that would have to mean that he got sick first. Like he was sick and then he stopped eating. Like
absolutely, and that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, but
that's what makes sense to me. That's what led to his death. He didn't die from starvation. He died from the pulmonary congestion.
Oh, so maybe he, through the long trek, he had hypothermia. He had this condition. He did find the food. He ate a bit, but succumbed, like slowly stopped eating, wasted away, and died to this condition.
I mean, you're sitting there and you've got this guy with you, and the guy's probably trying to feed him, right? Because he knows he's sick and he knows he's not doing well. He's trying to help him eat, and then he just slowly loses your will to eat. You can go to like hospice houses and stuff like that with these people with terminal illnesses that are, the end is near, and they'll stop eating for days. They're preparing for it. Like your body's failing. You're in a parasympathetic overdrive. There is no will to eat or live or anything like that.
Right. Okay, so now I want to bring it back because we started off with Joseph Shones, and he gets stuck, and he's waiting there for hours, and he sees headlights, and I didn't come across this before. Maybe they were truck headlights. They weren't.
Before we get into these truck headlights, can we just touch on Shones a little bit?
Oh, that's good. We could do a little bit on Shones.
It's just a little bit. Is it just not a weird? Like he just decides to randomly drive up this hill to check a snowpack.
He's like, hey, I was gonna check the snowpack by my cabin. Hey, don't worry about it.
Yeah, what cabin? First of all, no record of him having a cabin up there.
There wasn't.
All right. No, and then one of the most bizarre things that I learned too is the fact that the year a Volkswagen Buggy had, the only way the heater works is while you're driving.
Interesting.
Right. So as he sits there in his car, his heater's not working.
Yeah, when I came across that, I was like, okay, I could see if you're trying to take your family up there, you think you would go and check it out, but you wouldn't go we're at 10 p.m. or later now, at least. The game ended at 10. He's stuck out there for 6 hours. He's there all night. So he didn't go. I guess maybe if he works like a weird shift, he's like, I'm just going to rip up there real quick after work before I head home to make sure it's good for take my family there. Because there is reports of him just saying excursions, like he wants to take his family up there for whatever, winter picnic or whatever.
Think about that though, like just a random jaunt up a fucking snowy hill in my Volkswagen Bug, which has got to be awesome in the snow. I'm gonna go check it out, see how it goes.
Bald ass tires.
right? Like it just it's so peculiar. And then in all accounts as well, like you look into it, apparently Joseph Shawns is a fucking career bullshit artist.
Really?
Yeah, all the local people say he's full of shit. He'd tell a story just like he lied about being in the military, stolen valor, all that type of stuff. Apparently him and his wife didn't get along at all. So the fact that he'd be going on a vacation with his wife made no sense. And another interesting thing too is he had a daughter that was a little bit younger than the boys that also suffered from a certain level of cognitive impairment and hung out in the same circles as all these guys.
Oh, so perhaps Shones, after upon hearing the news of these missing people, made a story up.
Potentially.
Is that kind of what the author says?
It's bizarre. They haven't found the bodies yet, and it would be super weird that if he knew that the car was there, but
it's confirmed though he had a heart attack.
No, it's confirmed that he had angina.
Yeah.
Which he had prior to this.
Was an angina, is this like an anxiety thing? Like a tight chest?
Basically, you're getting, like, for him, it sounds like he has a stable angina, which means he's getting pain when he exerts himself, right? So that's why you'd be getting prescribed like a nitro spray.
While you're trying to push yourself out of a...
Right? Which would make perfect fucking sense in this situation.
If you are prone to angina, is your risk of a heart attack greater?
Absolutely. Like, the whole reason you have angina is because you have reduced blood flow to your heart.
So what's your theory of why do you think he's up there then?
It's a fucking great question, Braden. I know that he has been...
That kind of sounds like the kind of guy that would go up there, a guy who has a stable angina, a guy has a heart problems or stuff like that. Like, that sounds like the kind of person who would drive a bug up in the middle of winter to try and check out a place for their family to go.
Right?
Right? It just doesn't make sense.
No, I mean, it does make sense. That's what I'm saying.
He's just agitated the whole way up.
Kind of person that, hey, I'm going to drive up in the middle of winter to go check this out. If I get stuck, I'm going to have a fucking heart attack. Like, that seems like the kind of person.
So he wants to die, is what you're saying?
I'm saying that's the kind of person who doesn't think that stuff through. It's like, I have maybe I have a weight problem. I have heart problems. I'm going to drive up here and check a place for my family.
By myself.
Whatever. That was his kind of reasoning for being up there.
Or his wife was like, yeah, I'll go up there, but like, it'd be nice if we knew the snowpack. And he's like, God damn it, fine, I'm going. Like, just high stress the whole time.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's just a bizarre situation for me.
It's super bizarre, but let's just go with his story a little bit, because he does say he sees 6 people, but he also admittedly says he was he was very stressed. Perhaps he hallucinated or whatever, but he specifically says like 6 people, one holding a baby. And when he called out to them, the headlights turned off, the voices went quiet, and they seemed to like walk away.
I will, like, I have maybe encountered a few times where people are having like a massive MI, usually like a left-sided heart attack. They will have some type of like delusions and stuff like that, but there's no way this guy had a fucking significant cardiac event if he got up out of his car a few hours later and hiked down a fucking mountain.
Well,
there's no way.
It seemed like he got out of his car to like call out to them too. Like, he wasn't in that bad a condition.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, the interesting thing about him saying a truck is that we have this is kind of throws a wrench in this for me. We have another witness the next day, the following day, after the vehicles, the night it's stuck, around the time these guys should now be at their basketball game. A lady at a gas station says a red truck pulls up with these 5 men. And she says one comes in, he's kind of acting weird. And she says that Jack Hewitt goes to the payphone and calls someone. And the other men wait in the truck. They kind of look around. Jack Hewitt is on the phone. She just, doesn't think much of it until she sees the missing persons report and then calls it in. Her boss corroborates the story, says, yeah, like, I kind of remember seeing them too, says the same thing.
Oh, so they see they see the 5, but not getting out of a car, out of a truck. They see him
out of a truck. Now, The other weird thing is, if you remember, is that Jack Hewitt has the most cognitive disabilities. He can't dial a phone. His parents said that can't be him because he would never talk on a phone.
He hates phones.
He hates phones, and they're like seemingly like, yeah, like no. That was the one on the phone, and they're pointing at him. So this puts him back down the hill the next day, which would make mean they then turn around and then head back up in that direction later that day. Right? And this idea that there might be a woman with them who has a baby, like whose red truck is that?
We do get another encounter with this red truck too, which is super bizarre. You remember the bear market where they stopped to get their treats from before they left? So there was a story that surfaced. Now, it's actually surfaced quite a bit later, so it's kind of hard to, you want to buy into it because it's interesting, but this came out in this guy's book, and one of the family members, I think, was Tammy. She was related to Gary Mathias. I think it was her sister or something like that, but she says that the store owner of the bear market, they refer to it as the bear market brawl. The store owner informed the lead investigator that a group of men approached Jackie Hewitt in the parking lot and started taunting him. Mathias attempted to defend Jackie and a fight broke out. The boys then attempted to flee the scene and they were chased off by a red pickup truck.
Oh, shit.
And that was the night of the basketball game they went and watched.
So we have two accounts of this red truck on separate days.
Mm-hmm.
One after, so the one the night of the basketball game, one the previous night, which would have meant they came back down with the truck. But the phone call though, so say this is a thing. They meet. So what's the story here then? The red truck, like, abducts the five boys, like whoever is in the red truck.
Well, there is a little bit of there is one theory that possibly they had taken a bit of a detour on the way home to go visit some of Gary's friends in Forbes-town.
I'd heard that one, yeah.
Right? So apparently Gary had some close friends in Forbes-town, and a lot of people thought potentially that the person that had that red truck was one of the friends from Forbes-town. So,
and Forbes-town is the opposite way from driving back to Yuba?
Yeah, and it's quite a bit closer to Chico. But
it's also not down a Forest Service road.
No, it's not. So Kathy Madruga, she took it amongst herself to go track down these friends of Gary's because this was a pretty predominant theory at the time. So prior to moving to Yuba, Gary was known to hang out with a bunch of people in Forbes-town. Forbes-town was once like a prominent mining town, but it's kind of now turned into like a ghost town, known for its remoteness and criminal activity. So Kathy went to go visit Gary's friends in Forbes-town and states on the way up to the house, they drove past a tripwire stretched across the road. She said there were men hidden in the forest with rifles. She made her way to the front door and nobody answered. All she could hear was a baby crying behind the door.
Oh, fuck.
After giving up, she noticed that there was a large shed in the back of the house that looked extremely suspicious. So she decided to go take a look for herself. And when she walked up to this fucking shed, she noticed that it was a pretty, rundown shed, but it had crazy padlocks on it. It had a big giant bar in front of it. Like it was locked down like Fort Knox. And she thought it was super bizarre. So she started.
I think Fort Knox might be a little bit. I hope it's a little better than that.
Well, you know what I mean, though, right? Like it's got fucking.
Where is Fort Knox? I
Tennessee.
always hear Fort Knox, but I don't really know anything about fucking Fort Knox.
Pretty sure it's Tennessee or Kentucky.
So it's like an old 1700s fort. Is that what Fort Knox is? What's
Fort Knox is like the United States Gold Depository.
Okay. I thought it was
got 18 padlocks in a
Yeah.
In my mind, for some reason, I was thinking, do you know Fort Langley?
Yeah.
It's
exactly what it is.
It's just like a wooden fort with maybe some brick buildings. That's right. In my mind, I thought that's what Fort Knox was.
In Kentucky, yeah.
All right. I was mistaken. That's my bad.
Anyways, she starts fucking wrenching on this door that's almost as secure as Fort Knox. And as soon as she starts doing that, the door flies open and a few guys run out holding guns and basically tell her it's time to get the fuck off our property. And she looks at them and she says, where's Gary Mathias? I know you have Gary Mathias. And they're like, we don't know who that is. And then another guy said, I haven't spoken to Gary Mathias in 2 years. And they basically run her off the property. So she goes to the police and reports this to the police, and she's like, "This is super suspicious. I guarantee you, they have Gary. He's in a shed there. It's super suspicious." And the police supposedly go up there on horseback and check the place out, which Kathy says, yeah,
Oh.
that's what they said. And Kathy says that's impossible because the place was covered in fucking booby traps and shit. No horses could get around there, which I find kind of, but still pretty bizarre.
How does
How good is she at spotting booby traps?
Yeah, I was gonna
Well,
ask.
that's what I mean. Well, she was talking about tripwires and shit and guys hanging.
Yeah,
up with
she
guns.
fucking. What's that movie with the lasers with Sean Connery where they're fucking?
Oh, Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yeah, she's
What's it
Catherine
called?
Zeta-Jones.
Entrapment.
Kathy Mattias is in a fucking black onesie, fucking sexy slithering to pass all these booby traps.
I'd be into that.
Okay, so these at least one person acknowledged that they did know him, but they hadn't seen him in 2 years.
Supposedly, but that's what somebody would say if they're like, "Listen, got nothing to do with this."
All right, so
Okay.
we know Gary had a checkered past. One thing we haven't talked about is Gary had a fucking huge rap sheet. When he was off his meds, he was super fucking violent. He was unpredictable. He had pieced off to Oregon at one time, went to his grandma's house, and his parents called him, and they're like, "Gary, why don't you come back?" He hung up and proceeded to walk back and showed up at his parents.
536 miles.
Like, the man was
Whoa. 1 second. He walked 536 miles?
536 miles, surviving on milk off of people's doorsteps and dog food.
And-
Okay? That's not even... Dude, he pulled a fucking Shawshank and escaped from a psychiatric hospital through a fucking sewer drain.
That's pretty badass.
Oh, well,
He-
okay, listen,
well,
he's also kind of a piece of shit. Like, I got some...
Yeah.
There's some bad
Well,
shit.
you know what? Like, he's in the thralls of, like, like, compounding, like, severe mental health problems and self-medicating with super illicit drugs, hard drugs, nonstop. So he was not in a good place.
No, like he...
That obviously, hold on. Anyone who knows his rap sheet, I'm not giving him any excuses.
Okay, so Gary had to stay in a psychiatric ward following a violent outburst while on a hallucinogenic trip. He went AWOL while in the military, which resulted in him being arrested. At the time of his trial, he walked out of his cell butt-ass naked and sucker punched one of the sergeants in the face.
Okay.
Soon after that, he was given a medical discharge for having schizophrenia. After being discharged from the military, he stayed with one of his cousins where he was charged with assault and attempted rape on his cousin's 17-year-old wife. After being released from jail, he stayed with a couple who he's friends with, but the couple had to call the police soon after because Gary was using hard drugs, acting erratic, talking about how he wanted to stab a woman in the face, and telling the couple's 3-year-old daughter, "I thought I killed you once. I guess I'll have to do it again."
Holy fuck.
He's also got charges for prowling a cemetery at night and a few different fucking bar fighting charges.
Well, the bar fighting, I mean,
Okay.
you get a couple bar fights, but the rest of it, oh,
So now that we know Gary has his checkered past, perhaps that, you know, that red truck that they encounter at Bears Market, perhaps that's someone from Gary's past that knows Gary from, you know, his back area and is like, where have you been? You owe me money or you owe me whatnot, right?
Yeah, that's a great theory.
Let's elaborate on it. Let's hear it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Let's hear it, Andrew.
You motherfucker.
was this?
No more pre-pod pep talks, buddy. It's over. It's done.
He reached over the table, stole your notes.
He told my fucking theory.
I didn't steal your theory. I was just transferring it so you could take it off.
He was teeing it up for you. A nice,
I teed it up. That's
a
what I
nice,
did.
long, extra high wooden tee.
I put the ball on the tee for you.
Yeah, but that's all there is. That's what I was thinking, though. I think he maybe ran with a few bit of the rough crowd in Forbes-town.
Yeah.
And like you said, he was newer to the crew in Yuba County.
He
Right?
was, yeah, he was the
He was
newest
kind of-
addition.
I think maybe Gary got on the fucking straight and narrow. I think he got a good med regimen that was working for him. He made some friends, was trying to be a better person, escaped his past a little bit. And I think maybe when they went to Bears Market to grab some treats, they ran into a few of his friends from his past and possibly, you know, somebody that he had wronged in the past or potentially a drug deal that went wrong because you know that Gary kind of messed around with drugs back in the day and things went south. And I think they tried to flee and they got chased away because another random fucking story pops up from a guy named Alan Martin, who apparently stopped by the Matthias's house 3 months after the bodies were discovered. And he basically stated that they had chased the boys down to a bridge near the Orville Dam, stated that Jackie was being slapped around so they could hear him whine. This angered Matthias and a fight broke out. States that Matthias potentially got thrown off the dam, and then Glenn Baker drove Jack Madruga's car up the mountain.
So then they would drive them up the mountain, park the car in the snowdrift, get out, and scare the boys into the woods.
Where there was supposedly, one of the dads said that there was shell casings found close to Jack Madruga's car.
In a couple of the readings, I did see that, but and some people theorized that perhaps the police have just never given that information out because this is still an open case. So not all the information has been released, and some people think it might be because the police are
they suspect foul play.
Yeah, so they're keeping some of this so that people who really know would know some of this, could corroborate some of this evidence.
Now, Zell, you asked a really good question. Why not go arrest this man? Because that would make a lot of sense.
Arrest him.
But it's not. So we don't know if Martin went to the police with this story, but Matthias's mom did go to the story. But unfortunately, the police were unable to question Martin because Martin was found dead 3 days later of a very suspicious drug overdose.
Oh, shit.
Tammy Matthias, Gary's sister, stated that one of the Martins' good friends owned a red stepside truck, just like the one witnessed at the bear market and by Shone.
Oh, fuck. So, this theory is, so he has he's running with a bad crowd before they run into him. He owes them money. They have a vendetta out against them. They take it out on him and his new friends by, they drive the car or they force them off the road and drive them up there. And if there is shell casings and they say they did shoot him, they walked him up the path and it is snowing out. There's no footprints. So
there's no blood. The police say that no one was shot.
I don't even think they needed to shoot him. What I think is maybe Gary did get tossed off the dam. And then they realize, okay, we have these 4 other guys that we have to deal with now. So they load them up in the car, take them up to the mountain, basically pop them out of the car, fire off a couple desk pops, and they scatter up in the fucking mountain.
I got a question. And I think this might be a reason why they didn't run the car and stay with the heater. If they did drive the car up there and scare them away and they just took the keys, there was no way to start it.
It's interesting, though. The keys were found on Jack Madruga, which is so bizarre.
Oh, they were found.
Yeah, they were found on him.
Here's the two issues that I have with that theory. I like that theory. I do. I like it. It makes sense. It's grounded in reality. It's really true crime. You're like, okay, yeah, this makes sense, right? They followed up. The problems I have with it is that Gary's shoes were found in the trailer. So when they threw Gary off this dam, they threw him out of his shoes, or they took his shoes off in the car and they made one of these guys carry his shoes up to.
Yeah, that's the thing. The distance, if it's not 19, but it's still 11 miles, they really went through the motions to get it up there.
Yeah, why did they bring Gary's shoes? The second thing is the car is in pristine condition. If one of these guys got behind the wheel of the car to drive them up there, why the fuck do they give a fuck driving? Like, hey, this is a pretty nice car. I don't want to rat bag it down this road to scare you guys to hopefully kill you.
Okay, guys in the passenger seat. Guys in the passenger seat with the gun. Jack Madruga is still driving.
Speed up.
Yeah, but
speed up.
And he's a creature of habit, and he's like, I can't.
I
can't do it.
The theory of the damaged car, for me, is like it could vary. He could have just drove it up there with no damage. He could have just went slow and just not damaged it on the way up. I don't think the damage to the car is not a huge flag for me. But
they pop the gun off, scare them off in the woods. They still have the keys to the car. Just wait. Go back. You're not gonna hike 4 hours in the snow in the middle of nowhere. like
you're fucking panicking, you're shitting your pants, you're running, you split up. A lot of these guys are by themselves at this point in time. And that would kind of speak to why they didn't fucking light any of the fires or anything like that. They didn't use the fucking chimney, anything like that, because
That
they
accounts
wanted
for
that
that,
they were
yeah.
hiding. Right?
yeah, it.
So
it
I
does
mean,
account for that.
it's got a shit ton of holes. This is all absolute.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I
speculation
mean,
here,
just
but-
because it's very apparent that these guys were not outdoorsmen. They had no
Yeah.
experience. They never camped, especially in cold weather, you know?
Buddy, I would have been dead 6 feet from that fucking car,
Yeah,
and I would have died from exposure.
you're
It-
not wrong.
Now, this is one that I like. And again, every theory that we have, it's not going to it's going to have holes because there's holes on every kind of aspect of this.
What if the engine flooded on the car? That shit used to happen all the time with old shitty vehicles.
But I guess,
You get stuck, right? You're giving it a little bit too much gas.
overflood
But
the
that would have
carburetor.
to be what would cause you would have to be flooding it when you're starting, like the battery died, right? But so here's what this is one thing.
Was
that
this
struck
car
me
was
weird.
this car a manual or it must have been a manual transmission back in the day?
I don't know. We'd have
or was
to,
it?
We'd
We'd have to look that up. Maybe he stalled
But-
it and then he couldn't get started.
This is one I like. Is the one thing that I thought was peculiar is when they found, was it Jackie's jacket?
With the
Right?
spine in it? Yeah, that's Jackie.
It had the spine in it, and the jacket wasn't in tatters, right? Which I thought was weird. Like it wasn't torn up. It wasn't ripped apart. But that's all that was in
His spine.
was spine. There wasn't arm
Predator.
bones. There wasn't arm
Predator.
bones. So like he was torn apart, right? Like there was no arms. There was no legs. He was torn apart.
But his spine was
So-
still in the jacket.
In the jacket. So his torso and his skull was in kind of the same kind of area, right? And
Right.
it just remained in the jacket. But like no arms, no legs, no pants to be accounted for. What if they driving up there, and this is what my theory kind of comes from. I don't know. We have to kind of suspend belief of how they got up there. They get up there and they get stuck and they get out to push the car because that's easy to do. Or something crosses the path and makes them kind of steer off and kind of crash the snowdrift. And they go, what is that? They get out to push
Mm-hmm.
and there's something in the woods. I don't know what. And this thing,
Sasquatch.
I'm not saying
Sasquatch.
Sasquatch. I'm saying, okay, Sasquatch.
I'm saying Sasquatch.
Me too.
And these guys they panic and they book it, right? They book it into the woods running from this thing, right?
Lock the doors.
Right?
He loved his car.
Weird.
They
He loved
leave,
his car, he locked
they
it.
head out and they kind of get, they're stuck in the woods. This thing happens upon the two at the 11-mile mark. He grabs two of them, pulls their arms off, leaves them for dead. The other three make it to the cabin. They
Three.
break the window in a hurry to get in. They get in and they keep quiet. Now, Ted he's in bad shape. His feet are fucked up. So they don't know what to do. They're too scared to light a fire. They're too scared to leave because there's a couple sheds right outside that had more supplies and more food that weren't even touched. So that means that kind of says to me that they were perhaps they were scared to leave. They've already broken one. Why not break into another? They're scared to leave. And it gets to a point where I think two things were happening. I think day by day, Gary, without his antipsychotic medication, started becoming a danger to himself and others. And I believe that one of them went, I need to go get help. He left, succumbed to the weather. I believe Gary then was helping Ted survive. He had a military can opener on him that was being used to open the rations, and he was feeding Ted. But at a time, as he's kind of losing his mind and scared to go back outside, he decides he's going to make a run for it. He takes Ted's leather shoes because they're better than his own, leaves them. He grabs four Forest Service blankets and he heads out in the wilderness to try to make it. And at some point, he also succumbs to hypothermia and he sheds those blankets because four Forest Service blankets were found like 2 kilometers north of the cabin. They just had no idea. They were just like, we don't know if that was. They didn't know. They can't attribute it to this case because they're like, it wouldn't be like it's in the area where the work was done. So we're not sure if they're old or what. We have no idea.
So you think like a paradoxical hypothermia? He ditches the blankets.
And he just starts ditching them, and then he keeps going, and he succumbs to the elements deep in the woods. But something scared them enough to drive them into the woods. I don't know what that was, but whatever it was, they were scared to light a fire because they didn't want anything to find them.
Absolutely.
Well,
yeah, I agree.
that makes more sense than if. But also, if they don't want something to find them, you break the window, you jump into the trailer, you now have an open window to the outdoors. Why not at least like try and stuff like a blanket or a pillow or something
I don't know, man.
into that window?
I'm not even entirely convinced that Gary Mathias didn't live.
I also, that thought crossed my mind.
Right? Like,
especially when you said that he walked 500 miles. He's a resourceful motherfucker.
Absolutely. And like, who's to say, yeah, he's off his meds. So he, at this point in time, he might not even really have his full faculties. He might not know who he is anymore. He could have just joined one of the vast fucking homeless populations in these areas and just lived on the streets.
Like
he was
completely succumbed
noted
to
as saying to psychiatrists and stuff that like one of his fantasies was one day he just wanted to disappear.
It's still
right?
That very well could be, but it still doesn't solve the mystery of them, why they ended up the road in the first place, completely the wrong direction from going home. So that leads me to believe there was
deliberate. It was deliberate, whether they were forced or not. It was deliberate. You wouldn't go that far off direction up a fucking hill. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know, like they got lost but it doesn't make sense.
I don't buy getting lost. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but like the being scared, I like that. So you go up there, they're up this road for what the reason is unknown. The case is unsolved. Something crosses the road. You've never seen it before. It's terrifying. You swerve. You're kind of in the ditch. You're freaking out. You see this thing. It's fucking Bigfoot. It's Sasquatch. Glowing red eyes peering out from the woods. Starts fucking banging on his chest, scaring the shit out of these guys. They can't get out. It starts approaching. They run. They just run. This thing fucking chases them all the way up to the cabin.
What have we known in the past to make a car rendered pretty much useless to somebody? And then, able to fucking go back to perfectly working order soon after.
There is like some type of phenomenon that has to do with UFOs and abductions that a lot of times will stop a car. Some type of electromagnetic pulse or radiation or something that seems to draw the power clean out of the battery or out of the car.
Yeah. Dude, I like that because that, in my mind, can account. If we're talking aliens, I can get those guys up that mountain if we're talking aliens. Because a lot of people, we've read cases, we know about cases where people just go into a trance and they lose time, right? So if these guys are driving back and they just lose time and they just end up, whatever it wants them up the hill, guides them there, they're just all end up in a trance, not really paying attention. They drive up the hill and whatever, as soon as they get to the area, it kind of turns them to the bank and it just kills their battery, right? So now whatever wanted them there has them in the woods, right? Battery's dead in the car. It's completely drained. We just talked about that on Skinwalker Ranch happening. Mapimi Silent Zone, that kind of stuff happens. Battery's drained. They're turning it. We don't know what's going on. That would make sense. Why push a dead car, right? Why are you going to push a dead car out of the? Why would you even try? You're like, it's dead. What are we going to do?
But it wasn't.
Right?
They did jump it, so it did have juice. So it just
the next day.
It was a short
phenomenon.
So
right? So
wait, does that? How are they drawing up the road? Like like a psychic?
Yeah, maybe some sort of psychic intervention of this thing. Like, had they made it, they would have been like, I don't know how we made it into the woods. We don't remember driving there.
Completely, yeah, let's lost all that time.
Right? Now, maybe whatever had them also had a woman, right? Like already in some sort of, trance or control or something. Because one thing that strikes me as weird is like the next day we do have an account of someone saying like, hey, that's the 5 of them. We saw them here. And the one guy that shouldn't be using a telephone is the one that they ID using a telephone. Right? So I'm starting to think of like, maybe these are some sort of like replicas that have come down, like taking their shape. They're taking them
body snatchers.
Exactly. Body snatchers. They've come to town. They've made some calls to fucking Roosevelt and Area 51, right? They want come pick us up. Meanwhile, the other men have been dropped off. They come to in the cabin. They have no idea. They're like, where are we?
Well,
why are we at this fucking
that would make
weird
sense
cabin?
for the distance.
Yeah. Where are we? And then 2 of them go, okay, well, we got to hike out of here. Right? And they leave.
They come back.
And they succumb to their injuries on the way back down, following the cat tracks. Right?
What if they just kept Gary?
He was never
Right?
found.
Maybe they were studying, but maybe think about it, right? Maybe they wanted to study cognitive impairments. Maybe they wanted to study paranoid schizophrenia.
Maybe some of his paranoia wasn't necessarily mental health issues, and he was legit having encounters earlier in his life that he didn't know about.
Abduction encounters that sent him down that path.
Yeah.
And he kept, I guess there's no record of him saying anything about abductions, but maybe he just kept it inside, and that's what,
Well, he'd be crazy. He's already
crazy.
been spending time in psych wards and shit like that.
Yeah, and then you start talking about the abductions.
Probably kept it to himself.
Right? And they all try to leave and come back, right? And because it's so cold and stuff, they just all eventually succumb to the injuries until you have Ted, who's there by himself, and he just can't. He's too badly frostbitten, riddled with infection to even get out of bed to get more food for himself, right? It's, to me, if you just plunk those guys, this makes more sense to me if you just drop them at that cabin.
Yep, I agree.
Right? And then you make them try to get back. Then I'm like, okay, they died getting back. It was too cold. The terrain was too tough. They were not dressed for the weather. Okay, that makes sense.
And
but for them to make it there doesn't make sense to me.
And they're not, say they are dropped off at the cabin. They're not handymen. They wouldn't know to go out to the back shed, turn on the propane, start the pilot light, get the fire going. They wouldn't know that. There was
Honestly,
no way.
Andrew would have been in the same boat.
Andrew would freeze to
100%.
death for sure. He'd be like, pilot light? Oh,
What do you mean?
Yeah.
I would have just started lighting stuff on fire. In there.
You would have started lighting candles, is what you would have done.
Well, that's another thing though. They did say like there was books and paper that they could have burned that they did not for warmth.
Yeah, but listen, I'd be crossing guys up in that Special Olympics basketball game. I'll tell you that much.
We star forward.
Yeah, in 78, with how easy they were chucking that, those words around, we would all of us would have been on that basketball team.
1,000%.
Right? 100%. We got Silent Dan over here. He would have been on the team.
Sure.
Anyways, it's a wild case. I mean, because the events after the car was found are so wild, like the bodies, the trailer, and the distance between the car and the trailer in the middle of snowy winter conditions. Yeah, it does make more sense that they were taken to the cabin and then try to get home. Like to walk it just seems like, why keep walking? Because at a good pace, that walk would have taken you, say you're just walking on a sidewalk, flat sidewalk, you're walking at a nice 5K pace. It's going to take you 3 hours flat. Uphill, in the snow, the wind, how long would that take? Double, triple the time?
Okay, how about this, Zell? How about this? Even, let's say they weren't just dropped there, but, they get to the car, whatever trance they were in, missing time or whatever, they just hike. They, in a trance, hike up to that cabin, and they come to at the cabin. So now their bodies, they're like, man, my feet are fucked. What's wrong with my feet? Where are we? There's a cabin. What the hell are we doing here? How'd we get here? Right? And now, so say if these, say if the 8 body snatchers, let's call them, took them over. Now these things are like, maybe they didn't think they would die, and they're like, hey, we got a couple days before these guys figure out what we can kind of walk amongst them, right, without drawing too much attention, because no one knows they're gone, no one knows where they are. They're in the middle of the woods having to walk. We left them with a cabin with resources. They should be fine.
Yeah,
Right?
And they weren't.
I mean, I like all that other than the body snatchers, but I just don't find the one person reporting seeing Jackie Hewitt use a phone that credible.
Yeah,
Personally, that's just, I like everything else though.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that report came out later, right? You were saying?
Yeah, it came out later when they were taking tips from everybody, and I mean, like, yeah, like you're telling me that there's not somebody that kind of bears Jackie's resemblance that visited that service station and used a phone at some point. Like, I just think it's a reach.
Yeah, I agree. And then the mother goes to the house and it's all locked up. That could also just be they're dealing drugs, and that was
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And you know, it's tough. Again, I work with Special Olympics. I work with a lot of people who are independent, and there is a couple guys who would, like, if you didn't tell them what to do, I try to think, like, if I went to the woods with some of them, and you know we got dropped in the woods, they would just sit there and they wouldn't do anything until I told them. But there's also high functioning that would be like, okay, well, I can make a fire, like I can do that, and like these guys were driving. Some had military experience. So it's like, I hate when it's like, oh, you know, these, you know, disabled people, they just got lost and they couldn't fend for themselves, and it was the elements. I'm like, how do you account for them getting there? That's the hardest part for me.
Yeah, it's so far out of the way, the wrong direction. If it kind of makes sense if he's going to visit his friends and then it was like bad road conditions, it was foggy or snowy and they took the wrong turn. But as soon as you hit the dirt road, you would think, like, turn around, like we're in the wrong spot.
How do you know not one of them was dead already when he got there? Like, maybe the one guy carried him to the cabin, to the trailer, and then
12
just put
miles?
him down. And
That long of a hike in the
12
snow with
miles?
a dead person on your back?
yeah, but they were large guys. They were athletes. They were.
Well,
you
dude,
know,
think about it. Victor Weens he'd haul your body all the way up there.
No.
Not a problem.
He'd haul you.
But then the thing is, like, so so one of them drags a body up there, but whose body? Like, are they laying the body down at the trailhead? Like, if one's dead already as they're walking up, like, what are they doing with them? Because we know Ted lived for 13 weeks, up to 13 weeks in the trailer.
I'm not saying he's already dead. I'm saying he's close to dead. So you get him up in there and whatever. I don't know where they get the 13 weeks. Why not? Like, these fellows were in various, you know, mental disabilities and mental impairments. Like, bringing him up there, just thinking, like, I can make him better if I get him warm, if I get him inside somewhere, I'm gonna carry him. Like, I don't know. It's really hard to characterize I think it's very difficult to characterize their relationship, like how it is, like how deep it went.
Yeah.
Without personally knowing them. And so how would you be like, I'd carry you guys up there? Fuck.
Yeah,
like,
100%. I would die carrying you. We'd both get ravaged by Bigfoot.
I wouldn't go up.
Yeah.
I would just stay in the car.
Absolutely.
And unstuck it and drive you home or the hospital. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff with this. Nothing adds up, and that's why this case is such a mystery, because there's like, well, how'd they do? If they did this, well, how'd they do this? If they got here, how'd they get there?
Well, this story makes sense. If you dropped them at the cabin and the car wouldn't start for them, like, do you know what I mean? Like, that car, they couldn't start it up. They couldn't fire it up. That's why you leave the car, or else you would just use the heat.
But you had two of the bodies already left on the side of the road going up there. So those two had passed out. So I would think that at least two of them were trying to make it.
We don't know if they were coming or going, though, Dan. Like, that's the one thing. We don't know we're not sure if they died on the way to the cabin, or did they make it to the cabin and walk back.
And honestly, like, do we even know if that's where they died? Their bodies were ravaged by animals. Their carcasses were picked up and dragged and done whatever.
If they were taken by
they
Bigfoot,
were cleaned. It was bones.
Yeah. So, fuck. I don't know, man. So, this one's so tough.
Like I said, it makes more sense if you drop them at that cabin and then you have them wanting to leave. You're like, I don't want to be here. We need to leave. It's too cold to leave. Two of them are like, we're leaving, and they die. And then it's like, we should have left too.
Yeah.
Another one leaves and dies. Gary goes, sorry, Ted, your feet are messed up, man. I have to leave you. He leaves. He vanishes, never seen from again.
Gary
Or
always
he's never
wanted
there.
Gary always wanted to disappear. Maybe he orchestrated the entire thing.
I mean, it's also like
to make his elaborate scheme to disappear.
it was 4 months, and they found the 2 bodies, and like they were nothing but bones. Like it does. I mean, it would track that you would have another person that they didn't find anything of because there's nothing left to find. Like,
Yeah. Well, that's what, some people say that Gary orchestrated it to disappear. But like, why bring your friends to die?
Because it had to be all part of the plan, so nobody would look for him.
Well, yeah.
that is a horrible idea. Why would you take like why would you not just take like a scarecrow, toss it off the dam, and be like, well, he's dead.
Yeah,
Because then they drag the lake and have his body and realize it's a fucking scarecrow.
Instead of looking for 3 other people besides you.
Yeah.
that's why the case is wild.
Yeah, it's all speculation. You finally start talking just to call bullshit. Hey, Dan, great. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Asshole.
We still know, like, yeah, it's terrible what happened. These kids are missing. Families are rattled. There's still a mystery of why they all went missing.
Absolutely.
You know what? Like, no one knows why. It's an open case. No one knows. That's why people are interested in this case. The theory, one of the leading theories is that Gary perpetrated it. I can't subscribe to that. They really paint Gary in a negative light because of his mental health issues, but it doesn't make sense to lure them out. It doesn't make sense to hike into the middle of the woods and leave them and take care of your friend for a couple days and then steal his shoes and vanish when you could just walk off at any point in time.
I feel like he was the easy target.
Yeah,
he was the
100%.
easy person to pin on this.
And because they never found a body, they pinned it on Gary. Like that, honestly, the Gary theory to me that Gary perpetrated is probably the most popular, but holds the least weight for me. I can't subscribe to it.
Yeah.
No, I have a tough time with that too.
A lot of wild theories. So make sure you let us know. Facebook group, Instagram, any socials. Let us know what you think. What's your theory? What's your thoughts? What have you heard? Did we miss something? Because I mean, if we had a cue card, the UB Canny 5 still unsolved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, it's fun to look into. Check it out. Who's our theorite of the week?
Our theorite of the week this week is Hajime Lara Mata with the phenomenal Maester meme. I fucking love this. The Maester's brain was lagging that day, and it's got a picture of jacked SpongeBob saying Dan's brain using 8-syllable words.
Sure.
And it's got big puffy smiley SpongeBob saying Dan's brain trying to say cowering.
Hard. It's really hard to say that word for some reason.
Cowering.
Oh, there.
I can say it now.
You can say it. He's been practicing the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, actually. I just sit here and say like cowering like 5 times in a row every day now because for some reason.
Everyone's got something that they crutch on. Cowering's for Dan. Anyways, if you're not supporting the show and you want to skip those pesky ads, get early access, the bonus stuff, all the other stuff, the live stream, head over to alientheorist.com, support on Patreon and or Supercast. They both do the same thing. This week's newest supporters: Kimberly Myers, Ryan Taylor, Lyndon Shepard. Dylan goes up to a $10 tier. Daniel is my daddy. Danny, got something to tell us here, bud?
Different Daniel.
Callum Gray and Keenan from NZ, New Zealand, I'm guessing. Thank you very much for supporting the show.
And as we always say at the end of these things, keep those eyes on the skies.